I've made it no secret that I personally believe Hollywood and movie making in general is not in as good a place it was as, say, the 1970s, or even before that, as the 1940s, 50s, and 60s are often referred to as the golden age of Hollywood for a reason. Now, sure, no era of anything in history has ever been perfect, and as with everything else, even the golden age of Hollywood had its fair share of problems and movies that could still be ranked as among the worst ever made. But that being said, I still can't help but take a look at the movie landscape of today in the mid 2020s and say to myself that Hollywood is most definitely in its dark ages. I don't know how long it will last. I don't know if it'll hearken the death of the whole establishment or if it'll usher in a new golden age. All I know is that right now, Hollywood is in one of the worst places it's ever been when it comes to finding ways to entertain the audience. I mean, in 1927, The Jazz Singer was released. It might not have been the best movie, but it changed films forever by having sound. And less than 2 years later, Steamboat Willie came out and revolutionized animation in the same way. Now just look at everything almost 100 years later. But as I just said, it's possible the whole thing could turn around. But today I'd like to go over a couple of reasons why I believe many will look back on the 2010s and 2020s as a dark period in the history of Hollywood. And maybe even what killed it altogether if you're feeling pessimistic enough. Okay. So, if I was to give one simple reason as to why Hollywood has been failing to attract attention with most of their stuff, it would have to be that the studios don't want to gamble on anything anymore. Everything has to be part of a franchise with a built in audience. Everything must build upon itself. They've got to keep pumping out content so people will keep paying them easy money. And as I touched on in my video, did the superhero genre kill the movie industry, which you can find a link in the description to, that's not how Hollywood used to operate. The most they would rely on for a built-in audience was in adapting books, or sometimes doing remakes of a popular movie, as well as casting popular actors and actresses. But the bulk of their movies, and therefore revenue, was in trusting either established or hopeful writers and directors to turn out a great product. That's even how Citizen Kane and The Godfather, arguably two of the best movies ever made, came to be. And if they did turn out good, then they would encourage them by letting them do more movies. But the point is, most of the stuff coming out was at least to some degree new and different. And that's how human beings simply are. Churning out the same thing over and over again will never benefit them in the long run. But now, in the dark times, if something new and original does actually manage to slip through the cracks and be successful, all anybody cares about is how quickly they can churn out a sequel or spin-off to capitalize off of that built-in audience. And again, that's not how a business like Hollywood works. If they don't gamble and take risks once in a while, the audience is going to get fed up with them, which is exactly what's been happening. Because of their relying on franchises and other supposed surefire movies so much, it's caused complete stagnation in terms of creativity. Whereas at one time Hollywood had to rely on those young hopefuls to keep things running, now they're forced to work in these franchises if they're to ever have a chance of one day telling the stories they want to. And the thing is, I get it. You can only tell so many stories before it seems that nothing is creative or original anymore. As a man who's written books, I can personally vouch for that being a problem. But at the same time, that's also the mark of a great writer, to find creativity and originality where there seemingly is none. Only they aren't being given the chance to prove themselves anymore. But the other problem with franchises, as I briefly noted before, is that it makes the studios feel like they don't have to try anymore. Because they seem to believe if they just slap a name on something, that their loyal fan base will just eat it up and give them money without caring if it's actually good or not. And if you know anything about fan bases, the exact opposite is true, if anything. Because not only are they more likely to be critical, but they'll be hypercritical of anything and everything that's put out, as these studios often learn the hard way. But the point is, especially in the age of streaming services where it seems that there's 1,000 shows all coming out at the same time, it feels like content just for the sake of content, made as an excuse for people to give the studios money. And once again, this is honestly a pretty backwards approach for a business that's supposed to rely on creativity. But it seems that they've completely forgotten about that in the name of chasing guaranteed profits, which are never really guaranteed. And considering, even with all the duds that they turn out, that the hit or it stuff seems to be mostly coming exclusively from television recently, it makes one wonder if long-form TV might end up replacing movies entirely if that keeps up, especially with the future of movie theaters still a bit of a question mark. But if there was ever anything that represented this content and profit chasing problem, it would be CGI. Because, as I've said many times before, and this is not to take away from the animators that have dedicated tons of time to bringing these creations to life, as I have nothing but respect for them, but CGI just isn't all that impressive when you get right down to it. Especially because, unlike other types of effects that Hollywood relied on for so long, CGI has a notable habit of aging rather poorly very quickly. What's hailed as revolutionary one day will often be critiqued as fake looking not long after, with very few effects proving to stand the test of time. But the even bigger problem is how much Hollywood has come to depend on it. It's frankly ridiculous. Because, as is widely well known, before CGI, Hollywood used to have to pull out all the stops to make the effects they wanted to achieve on screen look believable. And some of what they did still looks amazing even today. Again, it wasn't easy for them, and many would argue that they were going to a lot of work over nothing. But they did it anyway. And that's what I often appreciate most about it. That it wasn't easy for them to do it, and that they had to seemingly pull off the impossible to get it done. But they still did it anyway. But with CGI opening up the floodgates so that now it was possible to depict anything on screen, they quickly got lazy and started to use it for everything. And the results have simply been one huge visual eyesore. Seriously, this isn't the Matrix. We don't live in a computer. So why does every movie now look like we do? To put it simply, the phrase too much of a good thing is very real, and Hollywood has a major overuse of CGI. It's like, at this point, just because they can do something doesn't mean that they should. It was honestly better when they had to work for the effects they wanted, because it both kept them in check and the effects in question looking better. But before this video turns into another rant about my dislike of CGI, there's also the fact that most movies just aren't fun anymore. Everything has to be serious now or preach some huge lesson to the audience, or a lot of people, both in and out of Hollywood, won't even consider going to see it. I even touched on all of this in a video just a few weeks ago, which you can also find a link in the description too. And simply put, I don't get where this mentality has come from. I mean, the Barbie movie was PG-13, and it makes it very clear that one gender ruling the other is a bad thing. Now listen, you can debate about Barbie's merits as a movie, how good it was and whether or not it was a satire, all you want to. That's not my point here. The only thing I'm trying to say is that what one would expect from a Barbie movie? Is an anti-patriarchy film what one really wants to sit through when the lead characters are dolls loved by millions for decades? I mean, what happened to movies that were just made as escapism for the audience? And more importantly, why doesn't anybody seem to want them anymore? And on top of that, the writing on the whole just seems to have suffered as well. I mean, I might get more into this in a separate video, but the writing mistakes being made in some of these movies today seem to be very basic ones that people of their standing should know better than to make. I mean, most of the time the humor doesn't work, the drama falls flat. Who are the people they're getting to work on this stuff? But at the same time, I guess that's what happens when you don't have directors and writers prove their merits, writing their own scripts before giving them huge budgets and the freedom to do whatever they want. I mean, the way they are running things it doesn't make sense. And it's no wonder the quality of the movies is suffering as a result. And not to mention, considering some of the things on social media that pass for entertainment that people are absolutely enthralled by, might also explain why audience demand has become somewhat skewed. Now listen, I know I've already made several videos pointing out these flaws in modern Hollywood, but that's exactly why I'm pointing them out, because they are a problem. And as I said at the start, because of everything I've brought up, and quite a few things I haven't, the 2010s and 2020s are simply not a good time to be a movie lover. Not unless one is willing to look to the past to find truly great masterpieces. Now, like I noted at the beginning, I don't want to be pessimistic here. Maybe Hollywood will eventually learn its lesson and take the necessary steps to go back to the way they used to. Maybe all of this could even lead to another golden age in the long run. Only time will tell, but until it does, nothing is going to change the fact that decades from now, the beginning of the new millennium will not be seen as a good time in the history of Hollywood. Alright, I think I'll just end it right there. So now I'd like all of you to tell me, do you believe that Hollywood and movies in general are in a pretty dark period in their history? Or do you believe it's actually been pretty great for them? Please feel free to let me know in the comments below. But let's just try and keep it a civil discussion, as I know this can be a pretty touchy subject, and I don't want my comment section turning into a war zone. I just want to have a discussion, not get anybody angry. Because you are all entitled to your own opinion on this topic, and you do not have to agree with anything I said in this video if you don't want to. And if you don't, I've got absolutely no issue with you. And thank you all for watching. I really greatly appreciate it, and I hope to see you all next time.